This was one of the most startling news stories I've seen in a long time. Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
Like Anna, I had trouble believing it until I dove further into the numbers.
President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration is having a negative impact and effect on the agriculture industry. The loss of workers causing problems for farmers out west.
It certainly doesn't help when you're already facing a labor shortage to now have your current employees that you generally depend on, not being sure if they want to come to work or not because of those potential, threats, I guess, to them.
That was a segment on Fox News, not MSNBC, not ABC News, not CBS. That was Fox News, and who you just heard from in the very beginning was Bret Baier, who reported on farm workers in the Pacific Northwest who are afraid to show up to work to do their jobs due to ICE raids. Here's more.
When ICE raided a California farm in June, rounding up illegal immigrants, the ripple effect has led to worker shortages at farms all the way up the West Coast. Some cherry growers in Oregon and Washington State say they had to leave more than a third of their crop on the trees. The USDA reports 42% of farm workers are undocumented. Other estimates say it's at least 2/3, but that could be changing. Just about every worker in this apple orchard in Brewster, Washington is a legal foreign guest worker on a 6-month contract through the government's H-2A program.
I don't know that I would call it a silver bullet. It allows an employer to bring in a legal workforce to work on their property.
Use of the H-2A program has been growing steadily for years and now sits at 380,000 guest farm workers, a 300% increase since 2010. But most small and mid-sized growers still can't afford it, leaving them at risk of losing their workforce and ultimately their farms.
So I understand the visa plan, the visa idea, which in a perfect world that would work out great, because look, the fact of the matter is when it comes to farming, that is a very difficult job, and farms historically, even in cases where they increase wages, provide, some pretty impressive benefits, have a hard time attracting American workers. It's just the truth. It's not because Americans are lazy, it's because Americans want other jobs. It is what it is. So what you could do is have a more robust visa program where you bring in, immigrants to work the crops or the harvests, and at least who's in the country. And by the way, since they're here legally, they also have recourse if they're being mistreated by their employer, which is an added benefit that I think is important and oftentimes overlooked. But if it's a costly system, and the smaller farms are not going to be able to stay afloat as a result of that costly system, well, we've got a problem there, and I don't know how you fix it. I don't know if you do it through some sort of, federal government subsidy that helps, bolster the resources of the smaller farms, because the last thing I want is the smaller farms to go under and have the situation where, the agriculture industry, which is really dominated by a few players, becomes even more, in power in this economic system. Anyway, what do you think about this, Cenk?
Okay, so first of all, I'm surprised that the number is that low. That of the farm workers, it's only 42 to 67% are undocumented immigrants. I would have guessed 98%, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Because every time we've done a story about how they did a raid in Georgia or Alabama and they took away all the undocumented immigrants. This is pre-Trump, right? They would live to regret it, and they'd bring them right back, right? Because they could, no matter what they put the price at, the wage at, people would go there, work half a day and quit, work half a day and quit, right? And so they could. So it turns out though, when you look into it, now I understand why. Because the rest are not necessarily American citizens at all, okay? In fact, the great majority are not. What they're doing now is they're giving temporary work permits for people from Mexico and Latin America and Jamaica and other places, and they're actually paying for them for their travel, and they're paying them $20 an hour. Okay, yeah, at $20 an hour, you can get people from other countries to come and do it legally here. And then I think, why haven't we been doing that from day one?
Yeah.
Right? If it turns out really Americans can't do it at a price where we could then, pay for that fruit. So they'll say, okay, the fruit, the vegetables, et cetera, that they're picking, now because you're paying 20 bucks, et cetera, it's gonna cost a little bit more. I say, I get it. That's what it costs. That's what it costs without slave labor.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm comfortable with it,
yeah,
right?
Me too, yes.
So then I'll eat less, whatever it is, we'll adjust, right?
I don't want to eat less.
Okay, but whatever it is, I don't, if the price of having that be really low is that we have an undocumented immigrant system in this country that's totally broken and lawless and chaotic, etc. I don't want to pay that price. I'd rather pay a couple of cents more for lettuce or whatever it might be, okay? So for God's sake, can we get this to sanity now that most Americans agree? Now close to 80% of Americans agree. Let's do a sane pathway to citizenship, right? So we'll give you the exact numbers in a second, right?
Yeah.
But as Anna reads those numbers for you guys, I want you to keep in mind that if you watch cable news at any moment in time, you'll think that Americans are at loggerheads. Like half of us want nothing but undocumented immigrants, and the other half hate undocumented immigrants and never want them to have a pathway to citizenship. Now, find out the reality.
Yeah, well, let me just comment on that quickly because the conversation is dominated by the two extremes. Haven't you noticed that? I mean, the people who have a nuanced view on any policy, like put immigration aside, literally any other policy, anyone who wants to have a nuanced conversation about it, they're not represented in the media. It's always the cranks, it's always the extremes on both sides of the political spectrum.
Let me say two more things about that before we give you the facts on this story. Look, Anna, you're right, and it's not just cable news, online media too, right? And so, oh my God, take the most extreme person on the left and take the most extreme person on the right and talk about them nonstop. Oh, look at how extreme the other side is. Yeah, I know, because you picked a dude from the very end of the spectrum. Same thing on the other side. Oh, look at this guy, this lady with the purple hair and blah, blah, blah. And she believes these crazy things and doesn't even think Sydney Sweeney's hot, right? Oh, that's all the left, right? Okay, and that's all the right. And have we been guilty of that? Yes. Okay, because sometimes things are so extreme and it drives you crazy and you point it out and go, don't do this, right? But guys, when you look at the actual facts of where Americans stand on the issues, and I love this new trend, and I'm very proud to be part of this new trend. And in fact, I would argue one of the trailblazers in that trend we have been as a show, right? Which is now getting people to focus on the things that unite us.
Yes, and look, at the very beginning of Trump's second term, I do think that Republicans were more draconian, and I'm talking about the base, more draconian and wanting like everyone out, mass deportations. But now I think seeing how mass deportations actually impact communities across the country, they're softening on the issue, at least based on what the polls indicate. So let's get to that.
Yeah, this is the story where I promised you a startling fact, and we're about to show it.
Okay, so here's how Americans' views on immigration have changed since Trump took office, according to polling from Gallup. Okay, so the share of Americans who want immigration decreased in the United States actually dropped from 55% to just 30%. That's pretty shocking.
That's a huge drop, unbelievable.
About 4 in 10 say immigration should be kept at its current level. Only 26% say immigration should be increased. The share of Republicans saying immigration should be decreased dropped from a high of 88% to 48% in the last year?
Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. Like, okay, I'm gonna keep it real. That's almost too unbelievable, and I'm worried that there's something wrong with the methodology. How does it go from 88% to 48%? That's insane.
Anna, this was one of the most startling news stories I've seen in a long time. The change among the right wingers is so huge among Republicans that, like Anna, I had trouble believing it until I dove further into the numbers, and it turns out they match. So, look guys, the pendulum swings, and so as we were saying, what you see in media is oftentimes a mirage, right? But what winds up happening is, this is a perfect case of the American people landing in the right place, in my opinion, okay? So in the beginning these days, meaning Biden, right? There's a lot more before that, obviously. Biden's too lax at the border. Everyone agrees, even the left agrees these days.
Do they?
Generally speaking, Democrats generally do, okay? And we do because it's true, right? And so at that point, all Americans, the numbers start rising, going, I want less immigration, less immigration, less immigration, right? And that number is huge. And then for Republicans, it gets all the way up to 88%, right? Then Trump does a pretty good job of closing the border. Okay, so that's pro-Trump, but it's also pro, hey, we're getting to a better balance. So the American people are starting to feel more comfortable because they don't see people rushing over the border, right? In the numbers that they saw before. Then Trump starts to do the mass deportations. Then you've got the guys en masse grabbing people
off the streets
in front of a Home Depot, breaking up families, no badges, thugs pulling up in vans, etc. And they start losing everybody, right? As we showed you guys here, Joe Rogan's gone. Half the podcasters are, in fact, I think almost all the podcasters that were independents, the bro guys, are all gone. They're like, we don't want this. Nobody asked for this, right? We asked you to close the border, nice job. We asked you to kick out the criminals, nice job, right? We didn't ask for go snatch up grandma,
right?
But with a bunch of thugs en masse. So now, once people see that, boom, the numbers drop like a rock, right? And the American people get to the equilibrium that they wanted. Now, this is not the equilibrium. Trump's gonna have to walk it back, right? But what they're sending a very clear message. We said close the border, we said kick out the criminals, but we didn't say hate immigrants. We didn't say that. In fact, this is a country of immigrants, and the overwhelming majority of Americans love and respect these immigrants and don't want you to ruin their lives. And a shockingly high percentage want them to become citizens.
Pathway to citizenship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a pathway is a pathway. You know, you pay your dues, you work a long time here at a super hard job for not a great rate, and then you become a citizen. That's fair. That's fair. And that's what Americans are saying now.
House Democrats are urging the Department of Homeland Security to require immigration officials to clearly identify themselves while conducting arrests for deportation, of course, after multiple reports have emerged that include men essentially pretending to be ICE agents in order to kidnap and in some cases, tragically rape women. I'm not kidding, there are specific instances that I'm gonna detail in just a minute, but these ICE agents are often seen conducting raids fully masked, without proper identification. They're usually wearing plain clothes. And I understand the reasoning for it. I understand why they're doing that. You know, they're worried about being doxxed. They're worried about dealing with violence or getting confronted by violence. There have been some, examples of that, video evidence of that. However, there's also a significant downside to doing raids and arresting people when you're in plain clothes. Because how the hell is anyone supposed to know that you're actually a legitimate member of law enforcement of any kind, right? And on top of that, there are bad actors who will take advantage of that type of situation. So there have been at least 3 instances of men impersonating ICE agents in order to hurt women. So bear with me as I go through these cases. For instance, in North Carolina, a man reportedly posed as law enforcement and threatened to deport an immigrant woman before he kidnapped and raped her. In Maryland, a man allegedly approached a Latina woman in a parking lot, flashed a fake ICE badge, and told her to get into his car or face deportation. He reportedly raped the woman in his car before law enforcement was called. And then finally, a third story involving a New York man who allegedly was posing as an ICE agent, punched a woman in broad daylight and tried to rape her before stealing her phone and purse. So identification is really important in this case, especially because you don't want someone to assume that they're being kidnapped by someone who is just a random criminal when they could be an ICE agent, right? And then on top of that, again, through these examples that I just outlined, there are bad actors who are taking advantage of the lack of identification situation, and they're posing as ICE agents in order to kidnap women and harm them. So the Democratic Women's Caucus is demanding action here in a letter to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and other Trump administration officials that was signed by 33 members of the caucus. They urge agents to visibly and clearly identify themselves when conducting immigration enforcement activities, to stop enabling impersonators who leverage women's uncertainty and fear of immigration consequences to rape, harass, and abuse them. In the letter, they write that all of our lives, we are taught to fear masked men in unmarked vehicles. As a woman, I can attest to that. That is very true. We learn we should run from such men to avoid being kidnapped, sexually assaulted, or killed. Yet ICE is increasingly conducting raids and arrests in masks, plain clothes, without visible identification or badges, using unmarked vehicles. Tactics that cause confusion, terror, and mistrust among the public. And so I totally agree with that. I also see the perspective of, the agents who don't want to be doxxed or met with violence. But why can't we just arrest the people who are hurting them, confronting them with violence, and instead do your job, identify who you are so there isn't confusion and people can easily identify that you are legitimate law enforcement?
Yeah, I'm much harsher on this. It's nonsense, ridiculous. And this is authoritarian crap. There's a reason why our cops are not in mass. There's a reason why they have their badges visible.
Right.
There's a reason why they get warrants. There's a reason why you can get their name anytime you want. Because law enforcement should not be done in shame. There's a couple of other reasons, very important reasons, but people leave that one out. No, law enforcement is supposed to protect and serve. It's supposed to be there to help the community. I know that oftentimes it doesn't, and we get frustrated by that, and we ask better of them, right? But they're supposed to help protect us. They're supposed to be of us, by us, right? So when you put them in mass, what you're saying is, I'm ashamed of what I'm doing.
Well, actually,
right?
On top of that, Cenk, sorry to interrupt you, but like, the last time I went on CNN, people were like outraged that I said, yeah, if someone's hurting my family, I'm going to, if I need to protect them by using some form of violence, I'm gonna use violence. And they're like so outraged by it. But think about it. I mean, I should have made clear that I'm talking about plainclothes ICE agents snatching people up on the streets. So if I have a member of my family who's undocumented, and some plainclothes person in a mask tries to snatch them from the street, yeah, I'm gonna meet them with violence, no?
Yeah, no, and so that actually is a right-wing point, which is if you want to put any kind of label on it, right? And so I think the right wing in this country was much more likely to say, yeah, if a masked guy comes into my house without a badge, I'm shooting him in the face. Right? I'm not saying that, I don't own a gun, I don't think it's the right way to go, but I've heard, don't tread on me. And I mean, they would say it about tyrannical government, the Bundys said it about federal law enforcement, etc. But a rando coming and snatching up your wife in the middle of the street with a mask on and no badge?
And you think that person's a rando? Because how are you supposed to know?
How?
It's
How?
a member
That's the
of
whole
law
point of the
enforcement.
badge.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the goddamn badge. All right, so look, there's one, you're saying I'm doing something terrible, and that's why I'm covering up my face and I don't want you to know who I am. Okay, already disastrous. Number two, we don't know who you are. So now it creates chaos and it allows people to come in and pretend they're cops, and you can't tell them because the cops won't show badges or their face, so you can't tell. So I mean, come on guys, they're now literally raping women with this trick. Well, you're still gonna be in favor of the mass, right? And the third is, what kind of country are we? Are we a free country? Or are we the kind of country we're run by a tin pot dictator that sends goons with no badges en masse to kidnap people off the streets? Brother, if you're doing it right, you don't have to do any of that, okay? When you do that, you're basically saying, I know I'm doing something wrong and terrible. That's why I'm covering up in shame.
Yeah.
The last thing is, I know their excuse. Their excuse is, oh no, they're arresting really dangerous people. And if those dangerous cartels or whatever finds out who they are, their lives might be in danger. Look guys, there are cartels. They are arresting some dangerous people, or they did way back in the beginning, like the first 3 weeks, right? They were already out of those guys.
No, those days are out the window.
Yeah, these are normal, innocent people, generally speaking. But okay, even if you don't think so, it doesn't matter. Okay, like so, they're so dangerous because they arrest gang members. But cops arrest gang members all the time. Cops in LA are dealing with the MS-13, 18th Street gang, etc. They don't wear masks. Okay, in Chicago, they're arresting dangerous criminals all the time, everywhere. By definition, cops arrest super dangerous people daily. So should they all wear masks? Should they take their badges off, let alone the cameras, etc.? No, that's not how we run a free society. That's how you run a dark, disastrous society.
Well, we live in that society, so congratulations, everyone.
You were talking about sending military forces to fight against the drug cartels in Latin America. Do you think it's worth sending our forces, our US forces there to take this on?
Cartels where?
Central Latin America.
Well, Latin America's got a lot of cartels. They've got a lot of drugs flowing. So, we want to protect our country. We have to protect our country. We haven't been doing it for 4 years. And we love this country like they love their countries. We have to protect our country. So, we're playing a tough game, but we'll have more to say about that soon.
The only thugs allowed in this country are in the US government, okay? And I'm kidding, kind of. Now, days after Trump officially authorized the Pentagon to potentially use military force against Mexican drug cartels, Mexico actually made a deal with the administration to expel 26 alleged cartel leaders to the United States. Now, why do we want them? Well, to bring them to justice, of course. And this story I have mixed feelings about. So bear with me as I give you the details because I'm really curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, I have an opinion.
All right.
I will share it.
All right. Well, okay. So those who are going to be handed over to the United States include Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, a leader of one of these drug cartels, and it's a group that's closely aligned with notorious cartel Jalisco New Generation, or CJNG. Another defendant, Roberto Salazar, is wanted in connection with the 2008 killing of a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy. Also included in this group of cartel leaders is Servando Gomez Martinez, also known as La Tuta, a former school teacher who became one of Mexico's most wanted drug lords as head of the Knights Templar cartel. He was captured in 2015 and sentenced to 55 years in a Mexican prison in June of 2019. Okay, so these are some pretty bad guys. Others have ties to the Sinaloa cartel and violent drug trafficking groups. Attorney General Pam Bondi has released a statement about this, saying that these 26 men have all played a role in bringing violence and drugs to American shores. Under this Department of Justice, they will face severe consequences for their crimes against this country. We are grateful to Mexico's national security team for their collaboration in this matter. Now, the cartel figures were sent on planes to the United States after the DOJ agreed not to seek the death penalty against them, which is kind of surprising, or against any of the 29 cartel leaders and members who were previously sent to the United States back in February. So that transfer included drug lord Rafael Caro Quintero, who was behind the killing of a US DEA agent all the way back to 1985. So why did the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, agree to these transfers? Well, one of the big reasons happens to be tariffs. So we had just covered a story about how Trump is using the threat of tariffs for more than just getting better trade deals. Like, he's doing it in order to make US national security deals. He's using it to also do favors for some of his corporate donors. In this case, I think the threat of tariffs being used in order to get these cartel leaders turned over to the United States could be a really good thing. So the February transfers came as the Trump administration was threatening to impose tariffs on Mexican imports to the United States. Then late last month, Donald Trump also spoke with Sheinbaum and agreed to put off 30% tariffs for another 90 days to allow for additional negotiations. And Sheinbaum has also shown more willingness to cooperate with the United States on cracking down on cartels. But unsurprisingly, she's rejected Donald Trump's threats to intervene by using military force in Mexico against the cartels. And he opened up that option by officially designating the cartels as terrorist organizations. And then last week he did something that I'm not in favor of, to be clear. He secretly signed a directive to the Pentagon to begin using military force against them. The order provides an official basis for the possibility of direct military operations at sea and on foreign soil against cartels. US military officials have started drawing up options for how the military could go after the groups, the people familiar with the conversation said. And finally, I'll end on this before I go to you, Cenk. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio and what he had to say in an interview about this last week.
Here's the thing, we cannot continue to just treat these guys as local street gangs. They have weaponry that looks like what terrorists, in some cases armies have. They control territory in many cases. So what it changes is it gives us legal authorities to target them in ways you can't do if they're just a bunch of criminals. It's no longer a law enforcement issue. It becomes a national security issue.
Has it changed their behavior at all?
Well, I don't know if it's changed their behavior yet, but their behavior is going to have to change one way or another. But it allows us to now target what they're operating and to use other elements of American power, intelligence agencies, the Department of Defense, whatever, to target these groups if we have an opportunity to do it. We have to start treating them as armed terrorist organizations, not simply drug dealing organizations.
Man, those ears really did outgrow his head. But anyway, look, this does bring up some legal issues, which I'll detail in a minute, but what do you think, Cenk?
First, look, I feel like I've been right about this all along. The ears are gigantic.
But they like continued growing way faster.
Yeah, that's the only part of Marco Rubio that grew up. Okay, now look, onto the serious story. So number one, just as I was gonna give Trump credit, you're gonna have me start instead with some criticism, but don't worry, hang in there, fair show in America. So first of all, calling them terrorists silly. We call everybody terrorists, it's dumb, and it allows the government to cheat on things like due process, habeas corpus, attacking sovereign countries. I hate it, I don't want it, we don't need it. We've been fighting bad guys and gangs in America for forever. We never needed that. And it's not like, oh my God, America is about to go under and Trenda Aragua or whoever is about to take over. Yeah, there's certain places where they've done damage, and we've been very clear that they should be rounded up, right? I can't believe that some people fought us on that. That's amazing. Okay, anyways, so we have a great track record against criminals, which I would hope that everybody would have, right? But calling them terrorists isn't gonna help. They're not about to take over Duluth, okay? So number two, attacking sovereign countries, whatever excuse you're using, is a disastrous idea. Okay, so no, we should not go into Mexico or anywhere else to chase these gangs. We've got to cooperate and work with other countries. Now, I will give a very rare credit sticker to Trump because he did do real negotiations with Mexico in this case. And getting those cartel leaders back into America in this case is a great thing, okay? Because oftentimes in their native countries, in this case Mexico, justice is not as certain as it is here, right? Sometimes they get some luxuries there. Some of the drug dealers have known to have like hotels inside prisons.
Sometimes they escape.
Sometimes they very conveniently escape with an open door and a key, right, etc. I'm kidding, but only barely, right? So the fact that they will definitely get justice, including for killing a DEA agent, murdering a sheriff in LA, etc. That's great news. We're in favor of justice for all victims and justice, period. It's in the title of my book, okay? So that was a good deal, and it's a little bit of a shame on past presidents for not being able to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because it turns out, look here guys, you have to keep it real, okay? No matter where you are on political ideology. So did putting more pressure on work in getting those people into a secure American prison for the rest of their lives? Not all of them, but most of them for the rest of their lives. Yes, no question. Could other presidents have done it? Apparently,
yeah.
Right? Now, of course, your partner makes a difference. And Scheinbaum has actually been pretty good about working with us before and after Trump, right? So you also need the right partner, but he got the job done. So credit sticker on that one. But do not go into Mexico or any other country with our military. That's mental.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, the fact that he was able to make this deal without using military force means that he shouldn't have to lean into military force. Now look, there's a possibility that Trump signed that order specifically to apply additional pressure to Scheinbaum because the agreement to expel these cartel leaders was just made, and Trump signed that, that executive order last week. So maybe that just was meant to apply more pressure to her. But look, I want to be clear, Mexico is one of our top trading partners. So sending American military into that country and using military force against the cartels, I don't think is a good idea. And this also raises some legal issues, including whether it would count as murder if US forces acting outside of a congressionally authorized armed conflict were to kill civilians. I'm not even entertaining this, actually. You think Congress cares? Like, really? Congress has ceded its power when it comes to American military force.
Right,
okay?
but on the other hand, that is a very serious and grave violation of international law.
It is.
To go into someone else's country and kill their civilians without legal authority to do so. So look, I'm a little worried about the Israelification of our foreign policy. This story has nothing to do with Israel. I use Israelification as a word here because Israel genuinely believes their government does, and unfortunately a lot of the citizens do too, where they think, no, we're allowed to go into any sovereign nation. We're allowed to bomb them. We're allowed to kill their civilians. We're allowed to kill their political leaders. We're allowed to kill their military leaders. And there's no repercussions allowed. And if you guys fight back, you're all terrorists and I'm gonna get America to kill you even more, right? So if America adopts that policy, that takes it to a whole nother level, okay? If we say, hey, Mexico, Canada, UK, Iran, Malaysia, whoever you are, you no longer have any sovereignty. We can go into any of your countries and kill anyone we like, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, that's lighting the world on fire.
Yeah, I
agree.
agree.
So it's a terrible idea.
I agree, and all of these international norms have been upended as a result of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. So we're in a terrible new situation, and we'll see how it plays out. But again, Trump has proven you can make deals, you don't have to use military force. So make the deals and get the credit, and we are giving him credit because those people should be brought to justice.
Yeah, last thing, guys. So look, this is an important story. Keep it in mind when Democrats tell you there's nothing they could do, right? And every time, and I mean, I just had a whole jubilee about this, right? But I've had 20 years of this debate with establishment Democrats. Oh no, you cannot get those people out of Mexico. No, the Mexican government will never. There was nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do. No, try hard and see if you can actually get something done. Like there's much bigger fish to fry, like paid family leave and higher wages for all of us, etc. But when Democrats don't even try, remember that how many things Trump got done, both some good and a lot bad, because he was willing to try. And Democrats need a lot more of that. Hopefully, obviously, we want them to go in the good direction and the right direction, but at least to have some energy and fight back. And Trump is showing, yeah, if you fight, sometimes you win. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.